Hi, I'm Brittany and welcome to my channel. In this video today we'll be painting a cherry blossom watercolor wreath. I have my pot of water here and my Winsor & Newton and Daniel Smith watercolors, and I'll be using the colors Winsor Red Deep, Opera Rose, English Red, Jaune Brilliant, and a little bit of my burnt umber. The brushes I'll be using are my Princeton Heritage ones in size 6 and size 3, and then I'll reach for my size 0 to paint the stamen. To start off, I just have this practice piece of paper, and this is my Canson watercolor paper. I'm just going to get a very light watery mixture of a pink color, so I'm mixing in Winsor Red Deep with a little Jaune Brilliant and a lot of water. These blossoms have 5 petals, so I'm just going to start by making a simple teardrop shape in this very light pink color. And I'm going to go around and have the points almost touch in the middle, but I want to leave a little bit of white space so that there will be a little spot for me to paint the stamen in when I'm finished with the flower. As I'm painting these petals, I want to try and make sure not to make them too perfect. So I'm going around the edges here and trying to make them a little jagged and uneven. While the petals are still wet, I want to take a dark mixture of my Winsor Red Deep and English Red, and I'm just going to touch it to the middle and let it spread out into the petals. You might need to wait a few seconds and let it dry a bit. If the petals are way too wet, the paint will spread too much, and if they're dry, the paint won't spread at all. So I'll paint another one here, again just starting with these teardrop shapes for the petals and having them meet in the middle while leaving some white space. Now I'll pick up my Winsor Red Deep in English Red and touch it to the middle here again and just let it spread out into the petals. And I feel like this one spread out a little too much, so I'm just gonna help it out here and push that paint back into the center. I have a little branch of these blossoms here, and so far I've just painted a 5-petal blossom like this, as if you're looking at it straight on. But here's one that looks like you're looking at it from the side. So I'm gonna try and paint that and make it look like we're looking at this blossom at a different angle. To begin this blossom, I'll paint a little crescent-shaped petal. And then I'll paint those same teardrop-shaped petals on this side, and this time I'll only paint 3 of them. Now while that's drying, I'll paint another one over here, this time pointing up and to the left. Again, I'll start with that crescent shape, and then I'll paint 3 teardrop-shaped petals on this side. Now that those flowers have dried for a few seconds, I'll take my darker red and I'll drop it right at the base of these 3 petals. This flower I'm painting now is just going to have 3 little petals. It's not quite a whole flower, but it's going to help me fill in this wreath. And now I'll paint some buds, and to do that I just take the tip of my brush and I make a little oval shape out of this pale pink color. Then I'll pick up my red paint and I'll just touch it to the bottom of these buds and let it bleed into that pink. To connect these buds to each other, I'll just make some little stems with my size 0 brush, and I'll very lightly draw these stems in with the very tip of my brush. Now with that same color, I want to paint some little leaves. So I'll pick up that color, I'm adding a little bit of burnt umber. I'll push my brush down and pull up, and push down and pull up and meet at the point, and that creates a little leaf. Okay, so now I want to show you how not to paint these cherry blossoms. When I teach these blossoms to beginning watercolor artists, they like to take a very bright pink and make very pointy petals, and they touch them in the center without leaving any white space for the stamen. So basically it's just the opposite of the way I just painted these blossoms. You can see here in the middle I don't have any room to paint my stamen, and the petals are much too pointy, and it just doesn't look like a real cherry blossom. So this is the way how not to paint them, and this is the way you do want to paint them. Alright, so now that we've talked about how to paint these cherry blossoms, we can get started on this wreath. And all that you have to do to paint this is repeat those simple cherry blossoms over and over in this circle. I have my Canson watercolor paper cut out into the size 8 by 8 inches. And now I'll just center this masking tape and trace it to create my circle. I'll put my little how-to card up here to remind me how to paint these cherry blossoms. And I'm ready to get started. So I'll dip my brush in water and pick up a very light mixture of the pink color and start with my first blossom down here on the bottom. Now I'll add one of the side view blossoms right next to this. And you want to keep these blossoms right next to each other, even touching each other, so you don't leave too much white space in between. And now I'll drop in my red paint into the center here. Now I'll just keep adding these flowers over and over throughout this wreath. And then when it's as full as I'd like it, I'll go in and add some buds and leaves. Now I'll really speed this video up and just get this wreath full of these cherry blossoms. Okay, so now I need to take a look at my wreath, and right here you can see it's fatter than the rest of the circle. So I need to fix that by going back in and filling the empty spaces with buds and leaves and little half blossoms. Before the little buds dry, I'll drop in my red paint, and then I'll add just a little stem to each of these buds. start adding my little red leaves throughout this wreath. And I'll go in between these blossoms where there's white space and make these little dashes to make it look like there's stems connecting all of these blossoms. Now that the fullness of the wreath is pretty equal everywhere, I'm going to go in and add my stamen. To do that, I'll pick up my dark red paint and I'll just make these little tiny lines with dots on the end of them. I'm not going to add stamen to every single flower. I'll just go around and pick a few of these flowers to add them to. I still feel like it's a little thick right here and I need to make this thicker right here. So I'm going to keep adding some leaves and some buds until I feel like it looks better. And that's all there is to it. This wreath may look a lot more involved than it really is, but as long as you just follow these simple steps, anyone can paint this. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you so much for watching.